I start inquiry problems with an objective in mind. I know where it's going. I know what the ultimate assessment will be. So I approach an inquiry task by asking myself, so what is the skill that this will lead to? Like what mathematical understanding will there be there so that by the end of it, at the end of the week, after some fluency practice and some different review and classwork and projects, I know the kind of assessment I'm going to give them on this particular concept, on this particular practice, and then I'll know what they know. Right? So you walk in and students are talking, and to an administrator who's impatient with that sort of thing, it might seem like off-task behavior. There's some administrators who in my past have confused quiet, hardworking students with some kind of teacher quality, which isn't always the case. So you walk in and they're arguing. Ideally, you see me, and I'm coming to a new group of students, and I'm not just jumping in straight away. I'm not just saying like, so what's going on here, guys? Or even offering a lecture right then, or other things that I might do at some point in my career. Instead, this is hard for me, I jump in and I just listen for a bit and try to get a sense of what people are talking about. And in these groups I might notice, as we all do, like the member of the group who has really taken the lead on things. And that kid has a lot of work on the page, and that kid knows her own work intimately, and that kid really wants to talk about it to me. So she starts talking to me, and I quiet her, and then I direct attention over towards pick a student. And I ask that student to explain this student's work. Again, trying to keep, they call it press, like trying to press the students and keep that cognitive demand really high. And the student is taken aback by that and doesn't know how to explain it. And so I say, that's fine, I'll walk away and come back. Work it out, come together on that one. Everyone should be able to explain it. And you walk into any classroom and there's a million different things happening, some subtle, some overt, some subconscious and unconscious to the teacher. These are things that I would point out that you would see in a lot of different inquiry tasks I would do. There's a lot of interesting work around guessing and intuition, showing how that can be both motivating to students, which is more obvious, I think, to us, that guessing is kind of fun and competitive in a way. But there's also evidence that guessing helps you orient your head around a context, as opposed to getting the context written out in a paragraph and being asked a very top-level, high-level question about it. Guessing is a very concrete sort of question, not abstract. There's no formulas, there's no lines drawn on the page yet, it's just you and the world. And that can be a very productive place to start the process. John Mason writes about abstraction as being this thing that math people are so good at, and it's so invisible to math students. This idea that we take the world out there and reduce it down to a one-line equation is just so bizarre to so many students. So instead of going straight to this spot, the equation, we start with some very concrete questions. What question do you have? What's your guess about it? What would a wrong answer look like? What info is important here? And that kind of steps them up the ladder of abstraction. Read a bit about abstraction. It's a lot of fun, and it's very inspiring stuff. Dan Schwartz, cognitive psychologist at Stanford, writes about a time for telling, like when is a good time for telling. We have this idea as inquiry-based teachers that all telling can be bad, that we should only ask questions or never say anything a student can say. And he found that's not the case, that there are effective times for a lecture. And one of those is when the student has struggled a bit first. So where do we go next? We have this inquiry-based problem, and the students have been engaged. They've done a lot of very interesting soft skills, from guessing to abstracting and decomposing and problem solving, all this great stuff we want from them. What have they walked away from with that experience, and where do we go next? They've finished a water tank problem, let's say, about volume of a prism. They found the volume of one prism, maybe two with an extension problem. I don't want to assume that student has a strong understanding of volume of prisms, and I definitely don't assume that they are fluent. They can do these quickly and nimbly. So the next day, we're going to spend some time formalizing the mathematics and then practicing it. So at the end of this task, we'll bring in terms like prism. We'll bring in concepts like volume and put names to those that are very mathematical, where previously students might have said filling up would be a kind of informal term for volume, let's say. And then we're going to practice on a whole bunch of just naked number type problems, different kinds of interesting prisms, tilted on their sides, straight up, those sort of things, and see what students do with those. But I think that, as inquiry enthusiasts, we can downplay, our liability is that of downplaying the importance of fluency. And fluency and practice and skill practice is so great once the students have a really strong conception about when will this be useful, where would I use this. That's what the inquiry gives us. We want students to be able to get to a place where these mathematical objects become just as real to them as a water tank or a baseball or whatever. And one way to get there is through practice and fluency and just a lot of exposure to those kinds of tasks.